Hey guys, welcome back. Happy Monday. Let's have a great start to this week by doing a sew along for the array dress from Papercut Patterns. So big thank you to Papercut Patterns for gifting me this pattern. Last week you hopefully saw my Palisade pants shorts pattern make. I will link it below if you missed it. Go over and check that out after this video. But Papercut Patterns was generous enough to send me 2 patterns to check out and share with you guys. So again, last week I did the Palisade pants shorts, and this week I am sharing the array top dress, and I'm going to be making the dress version in this really pretty fabric. I bought this last year, like summer-ish, fall, I don't even know when I bought it. Summer, fall, I'm going to say. And I believe it's a rayon, maybe poly, I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not doing a burn test. It doesn't make a difference to me, but it's like super flowy, drapey, and I think it's going to make a really pretty spring summer dress. So I'm really excited to take it from this. But I have had this fabric in my stash and just been waiting for the perfect opportunity, and I am sure this is it. So the array top comes in this cute, really cute envelope, cardboard envelope. You can see that it has like the tie waist option. There is elastic hem sleeve option, and then the bottom can either be just a regular hem or you can add elastic to the bottom of it like that. And then you can also have the wider bell sleeve without the elastic. It's actually the same sleeve pattern, you just put elastic in one and not in the other. It can be made with wovens or knits, and if you were going to do knit, it has the neckband option. The woven option has bias binding. I'm going to be making this version here, basically exactly what you see here with the ties and the bell sleeves. I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep the ties on, but if I change my mind I can take them off. And I am going to attempt French seams for the first time, so wish me luck on that. So if you buy the printed version of Papercut Patterns, they include a little booklet that you cut out of the pattern sheet, and then it's long strips that you glue or tape together, and then you fold it up to make this little booklet. So this is the array top in the Rubik's collection, and the sizes are 1 through 8 New Zealand sizes, which equates to UK sizes 6 through 20. For reference, I'm about a size 4 in the New Zealand sizes. So then if we open it up here, it has a little bit of info about the pattern, and then goes on to talk about measurements, a few different line drawings there, and there's the dress ones. So it has imperial measurements and metric measurements and imperial measurements. I am going to be making myself a size 4, and I like to use the finished garment measurements. If I were to use these measurements, I'd probably be making about a size 7, and I think that's going to be way too big. So I'm going with the finished garment measurements, keeping in mind that it is a sheath type dress, so it's not meant to be super fitted. And then goes through the layout plans for the top, and then the dress includes 55-inch wide fabric, 45-inch wide fabric for the dress, and then as well as for the shirt, and then as well as for the dress. And I'm going to be, my fabric is 45 inches wide, so that's kind of the layout, but honestly I don't really ever follow these. I just kind of lay it out myself first. I have over the recommended fabric for this anyway, so I'm not concerned about having enough fabric or not. And then the ties as well. For the size 4 that I am making, I need 2 3/4 yards for the dress itself, and then another 3/4 yards for the ties. So 3.5 yards, and I have over 4, I believe. 3.5 for sure. So I'm not worried about having not enough fabric. And a lot of times you can squeeze in stuff that more than what they recommend, because they want to make sure you're not going to run out. So then going through the booklet, they have care instructions and talking about cutting and marking and all that. Then we're going to first seam the back together, because if you noticed here, the back is actually 2 pieces. So you're going to make your center back seam. Again, I'm going to try the French seaming technique on that. And then you're gonna go ahead and do your shoulder seams. We're gonna do the neck binding, and then we're going to do finish the neck binding. If you're using knit fabric, then you'll do a band instead. Once you have your neck binding done, of course, you're gonna press it and make it flat, and then top stitch the seam allowance down. And I'm gonna work on the ties, which I won't French seam the ties, they'll just be regularly stitched together, and then put them on there, and then just sew up the side seams, and then the sleeves, and then, I mean, that's done. And depending on if you're gonna do the elastic and stuff, I'm gonna just do hems all around, but it's a pretty straightforward, simple make. They call it a rookie pattern or a beginner pattern, so I am pretty confident that it's going to turn out, as long as it looks good on my body and the French seams turn out and everything. This fabric is a super lightweight fabric, so I'm going to sprinkle some tips throughout the video on using lightweight fabrics and what is going to help with that. So now time to prep the pattern and get sewing.
I thought I wanted to save us, but I was stuck in the past. Messed me up, I wanted to hurt. Just give me something that lasts. I think you know what I'm made of, yeah. So when our mind is made.
Alright, so I have everything cut here. I have my front piece, my 2 back pieces, my 2 sleeves, neck binding, and then my 8 tie pieces up here. I cut everything out with an extra 1 centimeter seam allowance. So the pattern does come with a 1 centimeter seam allowance built in, but around all the cut edge or all the seam edges, I added an extra centimeter to allow for my French seams. I did not do that on the tie pieces because I am not going to French seam those. Those are just going to be regular seamed. So I'm going to start here by seaming together my 2 back pieces with my French seam. And then I'm going to also do the shoulder seams at the same time, and then I'll check in with you after that. Okay, so I have stitched the center back seam here, the 2 back pieces together. You can see I did French seams in there. So pretty. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of French seams in an upcoming step. And then I also did the same on the 2 shoulder seams, so nice French seam there. And I want to mention, if you are working with like a slippery, well, it's not really slippery, but a very lightweight fabric, there's a few things you're going to want to do to protect the fabric. So I'm going to say the biggest thing is to make sure you have the right needle for the fabric. I'm using a Microtex 60 needle, and I mean, they're teeny tiny. You won't be able to see it even if I take them out here, but they are super, super small needles. They're just going to ensure that you don't damage your fabric. They're also really sharp. So every time that needle goes through the fabric, it's going to actually pierce the fabric and not snag or make drag lines or big holes or anything like that. So you want to make sure you have a small needle, definitely important. Make sure your tension is appropriate. You might want to use a walking foot or a silk or satin stitch foot. You want to make sure that you're not starting right at the edge of the fabric because your machine can eat it. So start a little ways in and then back stitch as close as you can get to the edge, but again, don't let the machine suck that in. If you're still having issues with that, you can put a piece of paper underneath. Just regular printer paper works well, loose leaf, whatever you have, or tissue paper, anything will work, and then you just rip it off after. One last thing to mention is you don't want things to stretch out, and this kind of goes for every fabric, but especially for lightweight fabrics, and especially on bias cuts, so anything that is cut off the grain, so like your neckline, a lot of your sleeve cuts might be cut on the bias slightly, your neckband, etc. You just don't want it to get stretched out and then it'll basically be ruined. So one way you can fix that is by stay stitching. So you would just run a line of stitching around the one layer of fabric to keep it all in place. And other than that, just be really, really gentle with it and don't push or pull or tug or stretch or anything to the fabric as you're sewing and as you're handling it, and try and handle it as little as possible. Use the right amount of heat, maybe just steam if you're really worried. Don't iron back and forth, just press up and down with your iron depending on your fabric, and you should be okay. Don't be afraid of it. So now I'm on the neckband step, and I have gone ahead and ironed one short edge under by 1 centimeter. I've also ironed the one long edge under 1 centimeter as well, and that's gonna come in handy in a next step. And that's not in the instructions, it's just something I'm choosing to do myself. But the first thing we're gonna do is line up this folded edge with the back center seam, right sides together. I'm not sewing along the long pressed edge that I made, so I'm going to line these up here and then pin, making sure that I'm pinning in the seam allowance so I don't make holes where I don't want them. And then I'm just going to pin all the way around, adding a bit of tension to the binding but not stretching it out. So you want it taut but not tight, if that makes sense. And we're only stretching the binding, not the neckline of the bodice. And I'm not doing French seams here because the neck band will actually enclose the raw seams itself. So then once you get to the end, just take this and you're going to overlap it, making sure that that start is still folded. And then, I mean, you could trim this off a bit here so it's not so long, and then you can go ahead and sew all the way around with a 5mm seam allowance. Okay, so I have attached my neckband. You can see I overlapped here. I did cut some off here, and then I clipped the seam allowance, notched it, pressed it towards the binding, and then edge stitched the binding, edge stitched the seam allowance to the binding. Now I'm going to fold the binding inside, right along that seam, press it really, really well. And then, remember where I had folded under previously and pressed? I'm going to have that folded underneath when this is inside, and then it'll be edge stitched along there from the front though, so I'm top stitching. And I'll have to feel really, really closely with my fingers and try and keep that even all the way along. Okay, next is to do the ties. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. It's pretty basic. I'm not really gonna show you guys that. So I'll do the ties and then I will baste them on, and then I'll come back and I'll show you about French seaming the side seams. So I have one side seam done and I'm going to do the other side now. You can see I have the tie basted to the front bodice piece, and this is the back bodice piece, and we're going to do French seam. So I'm going to stitch all the way along, wrong sides together. So I want the right sides out, stitching all the way along at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm gonna stitch that all the way along, and then I'm going to trim it down and press it. is the wrong side, so I have the two right sides together, and you can see I pressed it here. Pressing is really, really important because you don't want things shifting and then you might not be able to enclose your raw edges. So you can see there, hopefully, that it's a little darker there, that little bit away from my hole. That is the raw seam in there. So, or the seam allowance, raw seam allowance in there. So now I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that folded edge, and that'll be my final seam. Okay, so this is now what the seam looks like from the inside. Once it's finished, there are no raw edges to be seen anywhere, and from the right side, it's just a regular seam. But because this fabric is a little bit transparent, you also won't see raw edges or those, raw threads kind of peeking around. So I'm just gonna give this one more press from the top, and then that's done. If you see any little threads peeking out, just trim them away. If there is a little bit of your seam allowance sticking out and you can trim it, go ahead and do that. If not, you might want to just go back and give it a bit wider stitch on the inside, but most things can be fixed with just a little bit of snipping. I have the body of the dress complete and the ties and everything. Now it is time to do the sleeves. So I'm going to French seam the underarm seam of the sleeve, making sure that it's the correct seam. You want to make sure your bottom is lined up here and that you're not actually seaming together something you're not supposed to be, like the arm side or something. It can be a little tricky because it is a drop sleeve, so the shape is a little bit trickier to kind of wrap your head around. So again, I'm going to French seam this one, and then I'll do the same on the other sleeve. Okay, I have my sleeves seamed down the underarm seams. Now it's time to attach them to the body of the dress. So before you do that, if you haven't notched your sleeve centers, it is marked on the pattern, but I prefer to wait until mine are actually constructed, and then I can get an actual accurate point of where the center is. So you can either mark this with a fabric marker or chalk or a pin. I like to snip, and then I know that it's not going to fall off or rub off or get moved anywhere. So I'm just going to take it here, make a little triangle snip. You could also just snip down like a notch as you would in a pattern from the pattern. So now I know where my center is, and I can match that up with my bodice shoulder seam because that is the center of that. So because I'm French seaming, I am going to first attach these wrong sides together. So I have my wrong side here, and I'm going to slip it inside my dress. Again, making sure that the top of the sleeve is in fact the top of the sleeve, and just matching up at the bottom there. And you can either pin or clip this. And then again at the top, that notch we made, we're going to match with that top shoulder seam. And then I'm going to continue pinning all the way around, and then I will French seam that as well. Okay, so I have finished the construction, and I'm now going to hem the sleeves and the bottom. I tried it on, and the length is perfect. I'm going to do a generous double folded hem on the sleeves, so it'll be kind of a bracelet length. I'll do about a 1/2 inch double fold, so 1 inch of hem. And then the bottom, I think I haven't decided on the bottom. I need to take off about 2 inches, 1.5 inches. So I'm not sure if I'll do a double fold 1 inch or if I'll cut it and do a rolled hem. I'll probably end up doing the easier because I don't have a rolled hem foot for this machine yet. So if you're not going to do a basic hem and you want to do the elastics, then you would just make a casing for the sleeves and then slip in your elastic here. If you're doing the shirt version, obviously you would do elastic on the bottom of the shirt if you wanted to. And that's it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to show you how it turned out.
this is a good a day as any to start the rebuilding of life. The roads that lay open are many when the old one's gone under the knife. And I can feel the sun on my skin, beginning to thaw from within.
Alright, so that is how it turned out. I am in love with this make. It is probably my new favorite. I was hoping that it could be an Easter dress, but of course Easter celebrations with other people will kind of be on hold this year. I do have a wedding coming up in May that hopefully isn't cancelled. We've had some friends that have had to reschedule their weddings this year. We have 4 to go to, so I'm hoping the one in May is still a go and I can wear this dress, but otherwise I'm sure I'll find a place to wear it somewhere. I really, really love it. The one thing I will say about this pattern, the neck is very tight. Like I have to really kind of pull on it to get it over my head, but I don't want to compromise the look of it because I could add in a little like teardrop eyelet thing in the back with a button, but I really don't want to compromise this because I really, really love it. So I'm just going to deal with it. I don't know if I'm going to regret not putting pockets in. The pattern does not come with pockets, but I of course could have added some. I did not. We'll see. Time will tell if I'm going to regret that decision or not. But yeah, thank you again to Papercut Patterns for this amazing pattern. I am going to be making it again, and I think it would really be fun to make it in a lightweight fabric in the top version with elastic waist and sleeves, and then it would be like a really, really nice blousey effect. So I mean, I have some fabric that I could do that with. We'll see. I'm trying to tone it down. But otherwise, look for this post on my Instagram. I'm going to be using it as the socialists kind of little contest. I don't know, what the word is escaping me. Whatever, for the Sew Your Decade. So the bright colors really, really remind me of the 90s. So that's kind of why I got this bright little flower clip in my hair, and I am excited to see all the makes on that. So yeah, thanks for following along. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. It's a long one, but I hope it brings you some inspiration and some brightness to your day, and hopefully this week can be a good one. Again, just take things day by day, and we're all in this together. Everyone wants to help each other out in this time, so don't be afraid to reach out to anybody, myself included, if you need someone to talk to or need help with something, or you know, anything that we can do to help. Most of us are there to help, so reach out if you need to. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like this content, and give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more sew-alongs like this with, you know, other patterns. Feel free to leave me a comment below letting me know which patterns, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye guys.